And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first panel discussion. After the insightful words from the High Commissioner, our focus now shifts to a concept that has long defined India's geopolitical DNA, yet faces a rigorous test here. It states strategic autonomy, India's defense and diplomatic posture in a multipolar world. I'd like to welcome Dr. Vivek Lall and Ms. Suhasini Haidar on the stage for our first panel discussion. Dr. Vivek Lall is, as he is the Chief Executive of General Atomics Global Corporation and sits at the helm of the world's premier nuclear and defense technology giant. His career spans pioneering roles at NASA, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon. An internationally renowned scientist and executive, his expertise covers everything from unnamed aerial systems and artificial intelligence to thermonuclear fusion. Beyond the boardroom, Dr. Lall is a vital bridge in geopolitics. He served as trusted advisor to the governments, a scholar at the Hoover Institution, and a champion of Indo-Pacific security. Joining Dr. Lall is Suhasini Haidar. She has been a diplomatic editor of The Hindu, and she spent over 3 decades decoding the complex world of foreign policy, international relations, and global conflict. Suhasini's reporting doesn't just happen in the safety of newsrooms. She has put herself on front lines, covering groundbreaking stories and conflicts in Pakistan, Libya, Lebanon, and Syria. A recipient of the prestigious Prem Bhatia Award for Excellence in Journalism, she brings a fierce commitment to truth, a deep understanding of strategic affairs, and a uniquely balanced perspective to our stage. To steer our session, we have the privilege to welcome our moderator, Mr. Santosh. Santosh is a distinguished entrepreneur, investor, and a visiting fellow at the Cambridge Judge Business School. He has been widely recognized for driving technological innovation and mentoring the next generation of global leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome them. Thank you.
Very warm good morning to all of you, and what a day and what a place we have chosen to have this conversation. Just to give us a little background about this place, actually that sets the diplomacy and the context what we are talking. This is the world's oldest debate place which is operational in the world. That's what I read today. And we are here where Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, and the likes of Winston Churchill, and so many of them have debated and discussed and deliberated in this place. Today I am honored to have Suhasini Haidar, the Hindu, I can say, the diplomatic editor. For about 31 years she has been in this career. And we have Dr. Vivek Lall, a distinguished from the defense space as a CEO of General Atomics. And what a way, I think we are meeting exactly halfway between the US and India, and we have both perspectives coming in today. And let me start with Suhasini. Actually, I'd made some reading about your recent work, which you did, wherein you say that, and you quoted this, to know a country's geography is to be able to predict its foreign policy, like the Napoleon quote you did, and you end up with the Hobson's choice. And we are talking of strategic autonomy. So how do you connect this, and where do you see the current, and you wrote this in November, so I want also to bring out in the last 6 months what has happened.
Absolutely, and every few weeks we feel in these days that the entire world has changed. But it helps to take a sort of wider view of what exactly is happening. The reason I quoted, and it's supposed to be Napoleon who said it, but there are a lot of other people who've been credited with that quote, saying to know a country's history, you have to know its geography. And what is India's geography? India's geography is unique, and of course every country thinks their geography is unique, but when you look at it, it's guided by the Himalayas, the mountains on its continental front. It has these 3 sides of maritime boundaries. It has a history which is both maritime as well as in engagement with its continental neighbors. And it goes way back, but even if I was to look at 1947 and all that has followed, when you look at India's history, it is it's deeply encoded that India will be independent. In a sense, engage with all, but keep its own counsel. In 1946, then not even prime minister, he was sort of the acting prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru gave this speech, which he then went to All India Radio because he wanted it to get this kind of broad audience, and spoke about the tenets of what independent India's foreign policy would be. And chief amongst the things he said was that we will stay away from the bloc politics of the time. Now remember, the Cold War hadn't even started in 1946. And yet he was already sensing that there would be a need for India to define itself in terms of its positions with the global powers at the time. It continued, and of course we all know the history of India being a founding member of the non-aligned movement. We then see, if in the 1970s, a slight detour, in terms of the cooperation and friendship treaty with the Soviet Union. We see a kind of shift back to a little bit of the middle in the 1990s, particularly since the fall of the Soviet Union, but also the Gulf War and India's needs for energy security, and so many other things changing, the economic reforms within India. And then you come to about the 2010s. I say 2010s, but it starts in 2000s, where it looks like India is aligning itself much more with the United States. Each of these has been followed by a certain correction. And why do I say that? Because even in 2014, Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to the US, and in the Congress he said, today we have shrugged off the hesitations of history, the idea that now India was actually confident of being able to engage the US on its own terms. But things have happened in the last decade that have shifted back India's position to the middle. Each time India maybe steps out in one direction or another, its underpinnings of its geography really show it that it requires to stay somewhere in the middle. To begin with, if you were to look at India's neighbors, we have continental challenges, and it's no secret that India's two biggest continental challenges are its continental neighbors, China and Pakistan. But if I were to go one step forward, 2 steps forward, go country after country, and look at where India stands, each of those countries, all the way up to Moscow, are really not part of the Western alliance. If I were to go into my maritime sphere, I see the opposite playing out. Where does India stand in all of this? I would have to say somewhere in the middle. Finally, the reason I come to the idea of the Hobson's choice is because I speak, and that time I spoke of the 6 shocks of the decade. India and the world have really been hit by a number of shocks over the last few years. And I think we're still in the period where we're facing the shocks. So we're not in the period yet where we can really study what they will mean and which way we will, where we will end up at the end of them. But very briefly, if you were to look at COVID, if you were to look at what India faced in terms of China's aggression at the line of actual control and all that followed economically with India's biggest trading partner, which is China, if you follow that up with what happened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and what that meant for India's food, fuel, fertilizer security, you follow that up with the attack in Israel, the terror attacks in Israel, and then Israel's complete destruction of Gaza and what it meant for India's connectivity security in that region, the grand plans for IMEC. You follow that up with every shock that has come. The conflict with Pakistan last year, the Pahalgam terror attacks, Trump shock. I don't know how else to describe it, but what the advent of the Trump 2.0 has meant for India in terms of economy, in terms of energy security, in terms of regional security. And then you finally get to where we are right now, not quite over the conflict in Iran, the US and Israel's strikes on Iran, and then Iran's attacks on West Asia, as we call it. In each of these situations, India has had to make a choice, and that choice has been somewhere in the middle. So I do think it is a Hobson's choice, however we come to it. There is also in the world a change, what I used to call the a la carte options and the buffet options. So in the old days, it was possible for countries to pick and choose. So here I'm really going to contradict myself by saying, I don't know how long other countries are going to allow this, but I know what is the path India will take. At the end of the day, India would prefer to have that a la carte option and not have to pick a side.
Very well said, and you touched upon the diplomatic side of it. I'll go to Dr. Lal on the defense side of it, because today the country is judged by the defense and how much, we are not talking about GDP much, but we are talking about what the country has, whether it's a country like Israel or any other country we are talking about. And you have been heart of the US, India, and you've been in this aerospace to, like the defense, nuclear, and all the stuff. And you have a very strong relationship with India, having worked in Boeing in India before in the early 2000s, and now again back to India with General Atomics. So what's your take on where it is heading and where, this kind of a diplomacy and defense, I would coin that.
Yeah, thank you, Santosh. And first of all, it's an honor and pleasure to be here. As you described, it's a very historic location. And thank you, Professor Jaideep Prabhu and Dean Gissan and the whole Cambridge India Society and Ujjwal for bringing all of us together. To answer your question, I look at it in terms of 6 stakeholder buckets. There is the political spectrum. Then you have the bureaucracy. The third group of stakeholders, if you will, would be the industry. And the industry would be not only the large, medium, small industries on both sides, but as well as the startup community. The fourth, I would say, is the media. They play a very critical role in shaping perception, shaping thoughts, etc. And then finally, it's the end user. So if you're talking about defense or space or critical or emerging technologies, at the end of the day, it's businesses and end users that are forming those connections and making sure in the market economy that there is a future. So as you look at all these stakeholder buckets, if you will, to create convergence, and I've observed the US-India relationship for the last 30 years, and there is great convergence, and it comes from trust. And in defense, of course, to collaborate in defense itself requires an inherent trust. And I've seen that build up, especially in the last several years. There has been an enormous amount of collaboration between businesses, between the governments. Some foundational agreements have been signed, like SISMO and LEMOA and BECA, and some of these agreements really fortify the construct between the governments, on the back of which businesses can then create value. And by value, I mean doing co-production, doing joint ventures, doing sharing manufacturing techniques and so forth, but also very importantly in critical and emerging technologies. So artificial intelligence, quantum science, and so forth, these are all areas of significant collaboration. It has ramped up very dramatically, I would say, in the last several years. And I think it's an inflection point where that will just continue to grow. And it's that people-to-people ties, as the High Commissioner mentioned, it's just going to continue to ramp up collaboration with the US, UK, and India.
Absolutely, and I think you touched upon the technology aspect of it, because defense today is not just the man war, like you saw it in the recent war, that the whole technology of the drones and all the stuff. And on the other side of, we talk about artificial intelligence, like taking over the actual intelligence, I can say, and especially with your sector of media, or you can say diplomacy, where is this heading in terms of, global relations, where this AI is heading, and where do you see that India should not be left out and catch up with that?
No, and certainly, and things move so quickly that already we hear the worries that India has got left behind in this AI boom, because it's very clear that there's the US and China, and then everybody else comes perhaps in the 10th position after that and lower down. Look, there's several parts to this. I think India definitely has its strengths, which will eventually work itself, but India has to think about 1.5 billion people. So its solutions when it comes to AI aren't necessarily going to be what other countries are looking for. And sure, China has a large population as well. when it comes to critical minerals and emerging technology, I think we also have to remember that this is part of every other choice India has to make, which is that yes, we can say we have like-minded partnerships in the West. There's no question of that. It's easy for us to have this debate here. It's easy for us to have our conversations, to differ with each other. But at the end of the day, the real hard numbers in terms of trade, as I said, China remains India's biggest trading partner. China today controls 85% of the processing of critical minerals. So you can look for ways to perhaps to find alternatives, to build viable alternatives. I think that's where India is really in the game, is looking for partnerships in different places. Something from the US, Pax Silica, Quad is part of that, something from Japan, but not with the idea of isolating others just yet. And as I said, strategically, that is where India has found its sweet spot, if you like, in not picking a side, but in being able to expand its own options. I think there's no, since you asked about journalism and AI, I think we have to think about where that is going to lead us. And there are going to be many, second and third tier sort of outcomes from what we are seeing in terms of the adaptation of AI. One of them is going to be that we are going to be flooded by misinformation. To get back to what I was talking about in terms of conflict, last year, the conflict with Pakistan showed quite clearly that even though you can be quite confident of your own fundamentals in terms of how well you do in a war, how well you are able to deploy your technology, how well you are able to deploy your defense systems and defend yourself, there is a narrative war out there that still requires to be won. And if you don't win that, somehow nothing else seems to matter even. So that's one part of it. I think when we're looking at how the world is emerging, there's a real deep understanding that what we're getting right now is not the truth, but that there will be a need for the age of authenticity, as I call it. And finally, I think, we're not just seeing it as journalists, but yes, as Indians, we are working with the real challenge, which is our population needs jobs. And in a world where it isn't just that we have this large population, it is a world that is using AI much more. It is a world that is actually much more anti-immigrant. I think it becomes more and more incumbent on a country like India to find ways to depend on itself, to find a sort of its own path in what seems to be, one more, if you looked at the waves of immigrants in the past, in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, there were the doctors at one point that the West really wanted, particularly in the US. There were the hardware professionals, there were the software professionals. In the 1990s, I think we saw a huge coming about of the sort of intellectual professionals. So we saw a lot more Indians going into politics and into public spheres in the West. The latest wave, if you ask me, of AI is a kind of anti-immigrant wave as well. I mean, I know that's a negative way to look at what is essentially something that is meant to help humanity. But I think these are all very hard questions we have to engage with.
Great perspective. And Dr. Lall, continuing on the technology, if you talk of India, because we are talking of strategic autonomy today, we've been digital consumers, like be the social media platform, and especially the US companies, and what she was rightly saying, that we've been consuming. But way forward, what has happened has happened. But way forward, what do you see that the trends in technology, which India should catch up and could be the trend setters in that space? Because even in AI, already we see China has taken much league in that, and US has of course been there. And I want your opinion on that.
Yeah. No, thank you for that question. I think I personally am extremely impressed with Startup India, extremely impressed with the talent that's emerging out of India. In fact, we as a company have partnered with an AI company in India. It's a startup. We have partnered with a semiconductor company in India, another startup. And the young talent pool today that is emerging in Startup India is really working at a world-class level. And I know we're sitting at the hub of innovation over here, And these are folks not only in the tier 1 cities, but the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Some of you may be surprised, but there is great talent in India. The demographic is excellent. And so I think we're seeing there's some of the things that these startups are doing that we as an established company are learning from them. So that itself is testament to kind of the talent pool that's available and the encouragement that's needed. I think in terms of future technologies in the defense space, I think persistent surveillance is going to be something very important. I think deterrence by detection is going to be the mantra going forward, and therefore, whether it is surveillance from space, the air, the surface, or subsurface, I think that's going to be a very critical aspect. I think robust data sharing between like-minded countries like UK, India, or the US and India is going to be a critical element and layer to it. You see various formulations like the Quad, et cetera, and I think robust data sharing among Quad members, for example, will be again a potential upliftment of everyone's security in the region. I also feel, in addition to all of this, it's very important to have mass in numbers, as some of the recent conflicts have indicated. We have to be able to scale up very quickly. We have to be able to co-manufacture, co-develop platforms that don't exist today. But very quickly, technology leaps are, the timeline is getting shorter. And so we have to be able to do that. And no one country has the lock on the best ideas. So working together is going to be key to get through not just the science, but also the engineering and the economics. Again, frugal engineering is very important. What India has accomplished in space, putting stuff on the backside of the moon, sometimes in Hollywood you can't even create a movie for that much money. So that frugal engineering is going to be very important.
Yeah, we're sitting right here where the frugal word was kind of innovated, I can say, and kind of exploited to the good extent, I can say. Yeah. And I would like to recommend all of you to, Dr. Lall is a fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford, and he has written a paper on quantum sensing, because in today's discussion I'm not able to bring out all the points. And same with Haidar, and we have a paper which is there, but I think you should rewrite it with the updated one and share with all of us.
We have to update it every few weeks, the way the world keeps changing.
Yes, Suhasini. And I think, how about the time, organizers? We are taking some questions?
Yeah, maybe one or two questions.
Yeah, I'll have the audience have 2 questions actually. Okay, Ram. Yes, go ahead.
I've got a question for both of you. When we talk about defense ambitions that are written on paper, delivery happens on the ground. And as His Excellency mentioned, trust is an important ingredient in that. What must businesses do to win the trust of the government, especially in the Indian context, to enable delivery of those ambitions? And what must governments do to win the trust of the businesses and create a more hospitable environment for doing business and helping deliver on these ambitions? If you can both answer these for me, that'll be great. Thank you.
Should I go first? Okay. Great question. I think, as you rightly said, they're mutual. I think spend on R&D and spend on co-production, co-development is a responsibility of businesses. And the increased spend on R&D and co-development, co-production, and going in that line is really something that builds trust. And so I would say that is, and at all levels, whether you're a large industry, medium, small, or a startup, but the percentage of focus on R&D has to go up, and that will build business. In terms of what the governments can do, I think they have done a lot in terms of putting the frameworks together to allow businesses to thrive. And so it is a matter of businesses stepping up and utilizing some of those frameworks.
I mean, I would say first, as a journalist from India who travels abroad looking at Indian diplomacy, the three areas where I find India lacks trust abroad. One is entry points in terms of just setting up, in terms of land acquisition, in terms of getting permissions through, and those are legend. You have reels of people showing the numbers of permissions that they've had to get. The second is in the area of justice, law and justice, really, the idea that you will get a fair hearing in court even if you're a foreign business. And the third is the exit clause, which nobody thinks about, but if it's not very, very strong and you don't have permissions to leave, it gets more difficult. But I do want to broaden what you're asking and say that India has to understand what its USP is. It's easy and it's almost lazy to say largest population in the world, and therefore people should want to come and build in India, make in India, invest in India. But we know firstly that in terms of actual disposable income, that market is a lot smaller. It's about 200 million. And India, of course, has its own manufacturing that caters to a lot of them. So what is India's USP? And, I'd urge you over the rest of this day, in fact, as we're discussing it, to talk about what that is. And I've always felt that it is the only country of its size that remains, for the moment, pluralistic, rule-abiding, international rule-abiding, inclusive, and a democracy. Because that is essentially what India offers the world. If you get it right in India, if you're able to do all of those things and produce growth and provide for the bottom one-third, if you like, then you have a USP that other countries would like to replicate. And whether it's in AI, whether it's in technology transfers, those are the countries that will build trust in the world.
Thank you.
So one question, yes. The last one.
So this is a question for Dr. Lall. I was at Stanford recently. You're based in California. I was in Stanford recently, and I was very impressed by the energy in the links between the defense, particularly the defense tech sector, and the university. I've been struck that there isn't, at least visibly, as much of that energy around the Cambridge ecosystem. I wondered what advice you might have for universities in terms of focusing on defense tech innovation and what opportunities there were in the UK-India space to do more in this area.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, James. And I think the answer there is, and I agree, I think as I laid out the buckets of stakeholders, academia and industry can do a lot more together, especially in terms of dual-use technologies. So sometimes you run into those areas of classification and classified information in the defense world that simply cannot move into academia. But now what I'm noticing is some universities are creating safe corridors where they do have classified spaces and SCIFs, if you will, where you can have those conversations to be able to do the kind of work. But I think a starting point is dual-use technologies. And there was a time when a lot of the defense technologies, we got the internet because of defense innovation, but a lot of the defense technologies used to permeate into commercial. Now you have the opposite. You have commercial permeating into defense. And so I think there's a lot of room for growing that, and especially in the Cambridge Innovation System.
All right. Thank you so much. And it's been, I think we can go on and on, but in the interest of time and, the deliberations we had. Thank you, Dr. Lall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suhasini.
Based on these brilliant insights by esteemed speakers here, we'd like to move on and invite Suyash and Ketan for felicitation for our distinguished speakers and moderator. And these gifts have been sponsored by Global Educational Hub. Suyash. And Ketan, please, if you'd come over as well.
Thank you so much. Why don't you go here first?
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you once again for the great discussion. Okay. Can I again have Mr. Santosh on the stage with me? Thank you. So now, to expand further on these very themes of statecraft and strategy, it is my distinct pleasure to transition to the official launch of biography of Dr. Lal, and this has been beautifully chronicled by Santosh and Sumant, who capture the very essence of this global shift. For the book launch, I would also like to invite Professor Gishan with us here. Thank you, Dr. Lal, for having you over. Can we also have on stage Mr. Mahantesh ji with us, please? So he's somebody who, the proceeds of our book launch, the book that we will have the sales, these proceeds will go to the trust, Samarthan Trust. This is a trust for disabled, and this is one of India's leading NGOs which empowers persons with disabilities, underprivileged communities, and which impacts millions of lives. And we have the CEO here with us. Thank you so for the great honor for having us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now, I'd like to speak a few words about the book. So the book is Fly High, Stay Grounded. And before reading about the book, I'd like to just mention that the author here was fascinated by Dr. Lal's story. And this is a very personal journey that they have gone through. They met a year ago in Judge Business School, and where they had the pleasure to talk about a few things. And from there, Santosh went on, and he was so inspired by him that he went to write a story about Dr. Lal. And about the title about the story is, Santosh has been really inspired by Steve Jobs, and he says, stay hungry, stay focused. And that is what made him write. And the title goes, Fly High, Stay Grounded. I would like Mr. Santosh to speak a few words now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I can speak here?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's what an honor to have a book release right in this Cambridge Union. It's indeed my honor, and we have High Commissioner here, Deputy High Commissioner here, and so many others, Jishan, here, and Dr. Mantesh, a very special guest who has come all the way from India and whom I have been supporting. I want to mention about him because it's very dear to my heart, and probably these kind of things made me write books. And Dr. Mahantesh runs Samarthanam Trust, which is the world's largest, I can say, organization for the disabled. And they are going to start a university for the disabled in Bangalore. So I just wanted to credit all the book proceeds to Dr. Mahantesh. And I'll just take a minute to say about Dr. Lal, but I request all of you to carry, I have about 30-40 copies of books here to read and reflect on. That we can write feedback on Amazon. I'll send the link to all of you. And it's kind of an inspiring journey of Dr. Lal, and like the title says, Fly High, Stay Grounded. Something I was always thinking about this title to be written for someone who is in the business of flying. He was in the aerospace, he's in the defense, and kind of that connected the dots. And thanks to Judge Business School, where I met him, I really should thank Kishan Shastri, who connected me. And my co-author, Sushant Gaonkar, who is also an alumni from my NIT Surathkal, and we've been both writing a couple of books. And this was kind of a journey which I could capture of Dr. Lal. His father was a diplomat, traveled across the world from Indonesia to Austria to various countries, and how his whole thing grew up, and how he became so focused in the aerospace industry and the go-to man, I can say, in the defense space today in the US and in the world. So I'll not take too much details of it. I want all of you to read this book and reflect on this. And thank you so much again, the whole Cambridge India Business Society, for allowing me to do this. And thanks, Professor Jishan, always a big supporter. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we'll have Mahantesh saying a few words for us. Thank you so much.
Yes, come on.
Thank you so much. What a privilege and an honor. Santosh sir, big thanks to you for having me and my friends, Adarsh Shastriji, Ranganath, Shalendar. So it was just yesterday when I called Santosh sir. He said something like this is happening, and I would like to donate all the proceeds of the book sales. One is getting proceeds to Samarthanam. More than that, it's a great gesture of his. And the book is about a great man. I always dreamt some 20, 30 years ago that I would one day go and study in Cambridge or Oxford. Never I had the chance, but I never dreamt that I would be here and stand with Santosh ji and a few other distinguished guests, Indian High Commissioner, Mr. Lall himself, and hearing from him and Suhasini was a fantastic honor. So Samarthanam will do everything possible to enable persons with disability who are like me. We strongly believe in ability, not the disability. So gestures like this will add tremendous motivation, and we draw a lot of inspiration from universities of this standard. So once again, my heartiest congratulations, Santosh sir. Vivek Lall ji, thank you so much for what you have done. Really flying high and staying grounded. Great gesture, title which Santosh ji has found for you. We need more people like you to take India fly high. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I remember reading one important word that stays with me from the book is Dr. Lall's word, "We are in a boundaryless world." And with that, I'd like for Dr. Lall to conclude the book launch with us.
Thank you. This is so humbling, and it's such an honor that my life's journey was something worthy of documenting, and Santosh ji felt that way. It's in the presence of the High Commissioner and everyone here. It's a true honor for me and my family to have this be launched, and of course for such a great cause. And I hope that there's a lot of success as a result of that.
Thank you. Can I get the books, please?
Thank you so much.
We will just take a 2 minutes break so that which can change the layout.